15, and hereby call in order the City of Montgomery Planning and Zoning Commission May 7th, 2024 meeting to order. Dave, is there any citizens with business not scheduled on the agenda that want to speak?
No, sir. We do have the applicant here for item number 3. So when we get to that one, I'll make a quick introduction and we'll turn it over to him.
All right. So let's start item number 1, consideration and possible action on the March 5th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
I make a motion we accept the minutes as published.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 2, consideration and possible action on the April 8th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes as published.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, and Marion seconds it. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 3, discussion on the proposed site development proposal along Pond Street, south of Eva Street by Lone Star Christian Academy.
Members of the commission, the information in your packet, just as a bit of kind of housekeeping items, is there. I know there's several different site layouts in there, and I just asked the applicant, just in the interest of giving you guys all the information, just to give me everything he had. So if you have questions on why they look different or something, I'll defer to him. And with that, this is Mr. Mike Rowe, who is, again, the applicant. I'll turn it over to him for an introduction, and then any thoughts or questions you guys have.
Is it on? Is it?
Yep.
It's on? Okay. Hey, I'm Mike Rowe. Address is 12802 Lakeshore Drive, Montgomery. We're proposing the Lone Star Christian Academy, the site build. But if you'll, we can start on the first page. I think it's scheme 3A. I don't know if you've got 3A.
Yeah, that's page 43 of your packet.
This is our final, or not final, but this is our latest proposal design, if you will. It's kind of grown from just a small parking lot into this and the way the building's turned. We're proposing a 13,500 square foot building. We're currently in a 7,800 square foot strip mall, if you will, off of Klepper Street. And we're just simply outgrowing it. We're at capacity with all the children and teachers as far as square footage goes. And that's kind of where we're at. So I guess I really would rather open it up to questions if you guys have any questions or need any.
The outside play area?
Ma'am?
Where is the outside play area?
Okay, so if you'll go to scheme 3A, they're marked as porches. That's
Yeah, okay.
incorrect. So we'll have 2. The back one on the back side of the building, it looks like it's got some kind of decking around it. That's partially covered, and then the rest will be fenced in and have mulch or playground area. It's about a 450 square foot area for play. It's for the older kids, the pre-Ks. And then on the bottom of the page, kind of middle of the building, that's about 105 square foot play area. It's for the smaller kids. It'll be covered with tarps and what have you.
And the other porch is a real porch?
The other porch, yes ma'am, the other porch is
Okay.
a porch.
So the front entrance will be on Pond Street?
Yes, sir. The entrance will be on Pond, right across from the bank, the First National Bank. And we've spoken with the bank, and they'll present or turn in whatever they need to do for allowing us access. More so an easement for the access. And with that, not jumping around, but if you go to the parking area, we are approved with MES for bus pickup and drop off. So it's kind of why we made our parking area a turnaround versus just a turn in and back out.
Have you figured out how to exit to the right and go out between Phil's and the bank in order to turn out onto that main street?
We have, and so if you'll turn to it looks like a survey, the next page.
Yes.
It's overlaid with survey. So right now, we didn't put the design in on
Okay.
Pond Street because of that overhead power line. We have been in contact with Entergy, and at a construction cost at our cost, we would pay to have the line moved to underground. Just, they have an easement on the fence line as well, or the property line, excuse me. So once that's moved, we weren't sure how far over we would need to be. So once that's moved, then we can widen the access coming out. So you'd have two ways out. It wouldn't be divided, it would just be a wider radius turn on both ways onto Pond.
Are you proposing to also come out on 105?
No,
They
sir,
can't.
on Pond Street, just right, if you turn right, you'd go towards Fields. If you
Right.
turn left, you'd go towards the dental office
Right.
to 105. But no, sir, there'll be no exit or entrance to 105 directly.
Because if you do turn there, the people exiting your school would have to know that they can only turn right at that stop sign,
That's correct.
not go into that traffic and try to turn left.
Yes, ma'am, that's
Okay.
correct. Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said you spoke with the bank. Did you speak with the owners of the house that's in that one corner that you basically half surrounding?
In the small lot up front,
No, on the on the west side of your cutout, there's a house there, a large house it shows on the aerial view.
yes, sir. So that's addressed as 502 Louisa, and we're under contract. We're buying this entire property.
Including where the house is?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, that
So-
cleans it up a lot.
But are you looking for that to also be commercial?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
And your school,
I'm sorry,
I was just wondering if it's all going to be fenced in.
ma'am?
Is it all going to be fenced in?
Yes, ma'am. Currently, there's an 8-foot fence.
Yes.
I don't know that we would keep that, just depending on any kind of, I guess, requirements that we may have from the city. I would rather not have an 8-foot fence, but as far as fencing, yes, some type of fence.
So they
will
can't
be-
exit the property line from the school? That's what I was concerned
And
about,
I do
okay.
want to make one point over on that, next to the house, that the property that moved goes up into beside the house. We would propose to fence that off and make it 2 lots instead of, the bigger,
Two residential lots? Or,
yes, sir. So here, this lot here above the house,
yeah.
we would propose to fence this completely off
Oh, I see.
and keep this residential,
Okay.
and then just only have this as commercial.
So then that red line should go north.
It should, yes.
Okay.
But right now, that happens to be the 2 lots on the survey. It happens to be surveyed that way right now.
Okay.
And it
So
is
that-
residential now.
So then the portion that you would request to change the zoning from residential to commercial would not include that parcel?
It would not, no, sir. And I think it's zoned right, or no, I'm sorry, not zoned. It's surveyed now at 1.7 acre, 1.69 acres. That includes that little cutout up there. The smaller lot with the house is, I think, 0.86 acres. So we essentially would make it 1 acre and 1.5 acre, basically, just to keep it simple. And then that would be fenced across.
Okay.
And then if required, we would do a kind of a landscaping barrier between the commercial and the residential.
Dave, if we change it, can it go back and forth?
So talk a little bit about the process and just an answer to that, generally no.
Okay.
Not without, going through the whole rezoning process.
Okay.
Again, only a small, portion that I think maybe like 50 by 50 is zoned commercial. Again, so this would be a rezoning, and just to remind you, we have one commercial zoning district that's, no matter what the land use is, if it's allowed in the commercial zoning district, it's allowed there by right. So, while we're talking about this idea tonight, just be clear that, rezoning is rezoning. And it's not tied to any one plan or anything else, just, want to, kind of make that, very clear, but two, in terms of process, again, this would be a recommendation from y'all. He would, if he felt like, well, we could support the idea of a rezoning, then that would give him an indication whether or not to apply for a rezoning. And again, as he mentioned, it sounds like we would want to subdivide the property, and I believe that the zoning, could be then contingent on on a subdivision if it's something as discreet as that. I'm not 100% sure on that, so I can confirm. But that's kind of the process, and again, ultimately, that'd be a city council decision after a public hearing and accepting y'all's recommendation of the board.
That, sir, the area in the backside where the covered porch is, the bigger portion of the covered porch for the smaller children, I see two things. I see like there might be a hole there, like maybe a pond. And then the second thing I see, or I have a question about, is that little strip of land that possibly just has trees on it. In your mind or your forethought, are you, if you need to expand, is that what that extra land would be? It's just, now it's just the way it's surveyed.
Yes, ma'am, that's just the way the land was surveyed.
Okay.
We have no intentions of expanding that way commercially. If
Okay.
anything, the house, the cross fence, if you will, that would
Yes.
be here, would come down and just make a bigger yard for that house.
Okay.
But no, it wouldn't be anything commercial or for expansion.
So is that a water hole? What is that?
That is, it's used to be
Man-made?
a pond. It was a pond that
Okay.
the owner, or the previous owner dug for dirt.
And how's that work, Dave? He just fills it in with water, and do we go and look to see if it's sufficient enough to withstand a building being built on top of it?
So he would, as far as the whole site, this would be a normal commercial site development.
Okay,
So they would have
all
to
right.
develop plans, do drainage calculations, so they're gonna do it.
Okay,
We don't typically get into, and I don't believe Rick gets into, the suitability and foundation design.
We do require an engineered foundation, so their engineer would have to, accommodate for that. We're one of the handful of cities that have ever known to ask for a soils report in addition to a foundation that's sealed by an engineer.
Okay.
So we know that they, have looked at the soils and are designing a building like say that.
I think that you should redraw your submission to emphasize the portion that's going to remain residential, because it is, you have it right now, it's kind of confusing. I thought that you were asking to change which is about 80% of it, if it was not cut off,
Yes,
to
sir. Okay. Yeah, we can
commercial.
definitely, I'll definitely do that, have it re-rendered and put that in there.
I like the idea of moving it into the city and providing the additional services for the children and everything. I think that's great.
Yes, sir.
my only concerns would be the size of that road and turning a bus and the, do you know approximately how many cars come and go in there? Did you do that?
So at this area or at our current?
Oh, no, I know about your current.
Okay, so I mean, I'm sure we could, I guess we could probably get a traffic.
I was just wondering,
Yeah,
because that flow, you've seen it at.
Absolutely, it's busy. Yes, ma'am.
It's time for people to get out of school and it's busy.
And that's also coming out of Pond Street onto Liberty, right there by Phil's. I've been at Phil's many times, and I can tell you that if you don't already know,
It's very dangerous.
that is something that needs a real traffic study
Absolutely.
for that, because
If I can ask on the bus drop-off, were you referring to school buses that
Yes.
come to your place?
Yes.
Yes, so,
So they would stop on Pond Street. So the parking lot here wouldn't take a full-size bus, would it? That would
no,
be-
so the drop-offs that we have now are some of the aftercare, and we have a couple of special needs that come. And so it's not a big bus that comes, and they don't come every day. When they come to Klepper now, they come on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I believe, and they come around 2:30, and it's, they're in and out, and there's 2 kids. we don't, we kind of reached out to MES and Lincoln, all the schools, just to see if it was another accommodation that we could give. And MES is the only one that would even entertain it. So I don't know that they would, I don't even know if they would need it or use it, but it is an option.
So they can't circle, so in the event of a bus turning, because they would have to turn by fields. That bus would be very compromised if it was turning by the gas station to go down that thin street, so that it'd make it safe to open the door to let the children exit off if that was the case.
That's right.
If it's a regular sized bus.
That's right.
But a disability bus is a smaller bus, is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Right now, it's a small bus.
Yes, ma'am.
And it can make the turn, Dave, right?
Yes, ma'am. It can make the
Is that what the question, of full size or small size?
That one, but, again, I was just kind of wondering,
Okay.
was it like a large bus that stops like like a normal school bus, we drop kids off, they just stop in the street, there on the pond and let them out. But,
Okay.
and then obviously, the smaller, ADA vans and things, would be able to handle the parking lot. But
Okay.
Just to add something to that, so our other option or another avenue we could go is we could provide buses to go to pick the children up. But that's
Yeah.
quite a bit of a liability on us,
Yeah.
on our side. So I mean, it's not completely, it's not an idea that we haven't or won't consider. It's just that it's a liability that we would definitely have to look at if we provided busing.
So when you spoke to the bank, did they say that they were they talking about giving you more property, or what, the easement, or what was you
No,
saying?
so
I wanted to take that, I may be able to just kind of feel it. So the backstory is that the Palm Street is not on the right of way. As you can see,
Yeah.
over on page 42, which was mine, insert in there, where the Palm Street right of way ends at kind of the south edge of the Valero property, or the Circle K property. And then, it's not a city attorney, but they probably tell you whether there's I believe it's a prescriptive, a prescriptive right or easement, to the land, but to paper it up, for the title folks and all that stuff, they would need a formal easement from the bank, just because the city's never, had to deal with sorting out why Palm Street's not in right of way.
Right.
So, if you guys are generally open to the concept of seeing another round of a site plan that, again, kind of delineates the residential side from the commercial side, is that kind of the direction that the commission wants to go?
I think we need to have a city evaluation of both streets, Pond Street and Louisa. There's no turnaround in the end of Louisa. In your redevelopment, if you could include some kind of a turnaround or whatever needs to be done there, but the street's in bad shape. No, there's just no way in and out of there.
Right, and so that little sliver going towards Louisa that we spoke about fencing off, I mean, that's not an option that's off the table. I didn't know about using that as an exit or an entrance from commercial and keeping it residential, or even I didn't know if it would be better to cut that off and separate the commercial from residential. But I mean, that's definitely an idea that we could take to rendering and have them draw it up just to see. I don't know if that would be, if it would need to be zoned as commercial, if it was, I mean, because it would be for commercial use. I mean, we would have to put some type of, I don't know. I don't know if we would have to put some type of turn lane or anything out or into off of Louisa. I mean, that's something we could definitely have drawn in and just.
Just something to look at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, but that's moving forward with us saying that we are on board with what you want or what you're proposing, but it would not be a complete yes. It would be, you would be giving us more information for the final decision. You're here tonight just to see if, as the zoning commission, if this is a possibility and favorable, that we would pass it on to the city council if we needed to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion to approve the discussion of a proposed site development along Pond Street, south of Eva Street, by Lone Star Christian Academy.
We actually don't need a formal motion.
Okay.
You guys are-
Okay?
Well, yeah, we do or don't need a formal motion?
No, we do not.
We
Oh, okay.
do not need a formal motion, but I think, again, from the staff side, we're gonna look a bit at the Louisa
Yeah.
and Pond Streets, just to kind of come up with a high-level view of, kind of the traffic situation there and different ideas, and then I think he's got some stuff to bring back to his team.
If there was a way to use Louisa Street with an entrance as an access on that strip, that commercial, the residential section there, I think your traffic, the concern I see in my mind, is like I said, I've been in and out of Phil's a lot of times. And it's relatively close to traffic light, but it's also a lot of traffic that goes by there. And for that time of the day when you're, especially departure as school is let out, I think that's going to be a real traffic jam there. If it was more amenable to be able to come in Louisa and exit on Louisa onto 105, there's a traffic light there, I think, isn't there? On Louisa? No. So I don't know,
Not yet.
yeah. Not yet. In any event, I think you should look at both options, Pond and Louisa.
Absolutely. We can do that.
We'll collaborate as needed on that.
Yes,
Sir. You, Bill,
Bill?
is it possible that I can speak?
Cheryl, you had your chance at the beginning of the meeting. No, I was just kidding.
I'm good.
No, go ahead.
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
just kidding.
No, Cheryl, please, I want to hear what you got to say.
I was kidding, Cheryl. Speak.
Speak or forever hold your peace.
Meeting for the gentleman who you're purchasing it from,
Yes, ma'am.
and the restriction was, but I haven't looked it up, but I know that we did that it was based on the fact that Louisa Street would not be sold as commercial.
Yes, ma'am. And so you're speaking of Barrett, correct? Barrett Mitchell. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, so the house, 502 Louisa, we've been doing this for about a year and 10 months to a year.
So you were doing it before he ever asked for the exception, okay?
No, ma'am, not that. We've been back and forth with Barrett about buying the whole entire property.
Okay.
And he informed us that 502 Louisa, the house, was, and I think I'm saying this, had a conditional commercial zoning for professional use
For his office,
for his office.
because it was a home.
Yes, ma'am. And so, yeah, that's why we want to keep that completely separate. And we have no intentions or even thoughts of trying to turn it to commercial. And which is the original, my thought was to put the fence up to keep that entire property residential. And then as far as the right of way, if we needed to do a road through there, I have no problem proposing that or bringing back a rendering. But yes, that 502, the house, and that 0.8 acres, we have no intentions and will not want to make that
So the
commercial.
property from side of the south side of the house to the end of the property will not be commercial.
Yes, ma'am. So from here, this way will be commercial. And we had intentions of making a fence here and keeping this residential. So 502 where the house is, this would be residential. And then with if we do the right of way or the exit entrance, I don't know if that's going to be deemed commercial or if it needs to be deemed commercial for that purpose. But as it stands today, no, there's no plans of making either one of these commercial. It won't be. I mean, it really would, we would have to tear the house down to do something with it.
They were talking about.
So we don't have,
Privacy
we don't
piece.
want
This
to
is
do
502.
that.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
About that bus coming out right there.
that's
If
what
they
I
had to.
said, yeah, that's what I suggested.
I just want to know if I was looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
So we all clear? So we're giving him the
Thank you,
kind of
Cheryl.
go
We didn't
ahead
know that.
to keep on going then with your, to give city more information on the next steps. Okay, all right.
Perfect. All right. right, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, review and discussion of a feasibility study for proposed 86-acre single-family residential development by Morning Cloud Investments / Solid Bridge Construction.
All right. Good evening. So this is just a report item. So this feasibility study was presented to council at their last meeting in April. So we will go through it, same thing that we told them, and I'll give you kind of the update of where we stand since last council meeting as well. So this development, if you look on the cover page, starting on page 53, is the part of the Stowe tract. So we're sort of talking about right before the meeting. It lines up outside of the tennis courts on the old Plantersville or old Dublin Plantersville side, and then just around the bend right before the railroad tracks on the old Plantersville side of the property, and extends all the way across. So what this developer is proposing is based on their current land plan, which is subject to change, they're looking at 65-foot lots, about 246 of them total, looking to get full city services to it. If you go to page 55, the executive summary, just kind of hit the high points of it. From a water capacity standpoint, from a water connection standpoint, it would connect to both on both ends of the property, where Redbird Meadows is putting in a 12-inch water line on the high school side, and there's an existing 8-inch water line on the old Plantersville side. They would connect to both ultimately as they build out their development to close that loop. City would need, as we have a lot of developments coming to the city, continuing to plan for improvements. So one thing we would recommend this development and the next is the city proceed with the booster pump addition at the water plant. That's been a planned project. It's on the capital improvement plan, but these developments are pushing us to that point to go ahead and proceed, as well as proceeding with the design of water plant number 4, which will be located over at Old Plantersville and Old Dublin Plantersville, across from the current ag barn for MISD. That property was acquired by the city, is in the process of being acquired by the city through the development agreement with Redbird. Regarding sewer capacity, so kind of the same story. So as far as how this tract gets served, this tract is low in the middle. So if you look at the exhibit on the page or on the screen, where that pond is obviously the low point. So our recommendation is one lift station in the center of it to serve the entire property, as well as make it deep enough so as there's further properties to the north toward 105 can make their way that way by gravity, so we don't end up with a bunch of lift stations. They would be responsible for that cost, as well as a force main to extend out of there. And our recommendation is that they would pump all the way around to the Lone Star Cowboy Church to bypass lift station number 4 or 5, so we're not pumping multiple times and having to upgrade those facilities. Regarding overall sewer capacity, the city has awarded a qualification to Happen Associates to begin design of the sewer plant project. We are in the negotiation phase of that to get that design kicked off to get that expansion underway. Going through the rest of the executive summary, because I think a lot of the high points you'll see a summary of the costs associated between the impact fees, the off-site improvements, and estimated escrow in order to cover the cost of the development. That's totaling about $1.45 million, with the bulk of that being about 800 and something thousand for the impact fees based on your current rates. So as you'll know, the impact fee, which this group has looked at as CIAC, there's a public hearing, I believe, the 28th council meeting for those increases to the impact fees. The very bottom of that page, you're looking at assessed valuation. So based on this land plan, they're looking at about $400,000 per home, which is a total of $94 million in taxable value. The city does offer a homestead exemption of 20%. Our assumption would be that 95% of those homes would request that exemption. So from an annual tax revenue full build out, based on your current tax rate, you're looking at about $360,000 a year in additional ad valorem tax.
For how long?
That's indefinite. So at
All right.
full build out, based on current rates and that $94 million value, which is all. Of course, subject to change. A couple other things that going over to page 56, second section. So annexation to this property is partly located outside the city limits, so annexation would be required. Other thing to note, it's more of just FYI and keep it documented, is the property is partly in, or was partly in the Dobbin-Plantersville CCN. This was part of a 2011 settlement between the city and Dobbin-Plantersville that excluded this portion of it, so the city is able to serve the property. Other thing to note is based on their land plan, they would need variances that would come back to y'all and ultimately council for lot width, lot depth, lot area, and side yard setback. So again, none of those have been approved or requested, but just based on what they're proposing today, that's what they would likely be asking for. And finally, I mentioned before, this is the same developer that was looking at the Stewart tract on Lone Star Parkway that was proposing a PID, Public Improvement District, to help fund some of that infrastructure via an assessment to the property owners versus a tax. And conceptually, they'd be looking at some type of reimbursement mechanism here similar to a PID. That those details haven't been worked out. The rest of our report goes in more detail about water and sewer, which I think we've covered, but I'm glad to answer questions. Big things on this are traffic and considerations. So if you go back to Exhibit G on our report, it is page 63. You'll see, excuse me, page 63 is the utilities. Page 72. You're right, it's page 72. And 73. So the county thoroughfare plan has a north-south corridor and an east-west corridor going through this property. So that north-south corridor carries all the way up to Lone Star Parkway and continues on to 1097 west. And then the east-west corridor comes from this property to 149 and ultimately over to 2854. So when you lay those out on the property, it would cross right through the pond at Womack Cemetery Road and have to cross the road. We talked to the railroad, and as expected, they will not allow another at-grade crossing unless you remove two. So in order to put an at-grade crossing at Womack, which is obviously a road to nowhere today, you would have to close down both Old Plantersville and Old Dobbin-Plantersville, which isn't feasible. Nor is it, in our opinion, feasible that an overpass in this location makes any sense. When there's, we're speaking of a west loop and southern loop of Lone Star Parkway, which would have an overpass, that makes a whole lot more sense than this road. So if you look on page 72 of your report, you'll see a kind of drawn-in blue line. This is high-level rough, making that north-south corridor just continue on to be the east-west to create a connection between Lone Star Parkway and 149, ultimately through that property and around here.
So that is a projected future south loop?
No, so the south loop is off of this page on page 72. So
What's
if you go to page 73, that's a more zoomed out view, just a cutout from the county's thoroughfare plan.
Oh, okay.
So the quote unquote south loop would be somewhere around that NR 210. Or the where it says Tri-Lakes even further south. So this wouldn't necessarily be not necessarily, this would not be the south loop.
So this would be more, that 73 is the more realistic of the,
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Well, the 73, so the 72, the blue line is, I think, what is it more realistic than, if you're looking on page 73, it's not really labeled, but it's Westway Drive, where that extends through and keeps on going south, as well as the NR 211. So it's kind of the combination of those two streets, but making them smaller. So what the county has proposed on their plan for the north-south road is, I think, 100 or 120 foot right away. So a 4-lane boulevard section for the major thoroughfare. With this not continuing south and turning, our recommendations, we make it a 36 foot wide pavement. So center lane and 2 turn lanes, could be a median, it could be just a center lane and an 80-foot right of way because again, the
So-
need isn't there.
So the developers are aware that these
Yes.
are maybe going through what they want to develop.
So that's kind of the point of where we're with it now. So we had a call with the developer last week, really related to the road. So they're looking at other options on how to route it through the site and around the site. One thing that we just have to be considerate of is the railroad. One proposed solution they came up with was to extend Westway Drive and put it on the old Dobbin Plantersville Road and then cross the railroad tracks, cross the railroad tracks again and make it out, which if you're looking from we're trying to get a through street, cross the railroad twice is not an efficient solution to that. But that's where they're currently at the drawing board.
Who gets to turn it down?
Do what?
Who's the ultimate person that says no? Is it just conversations between you and the developer?
No, ultimately that would be the council. You know, kind of any
The city
conversations
council, okay.
that we have,
Okay.
all lead to, every decision we make, on their end. The scale of this road, as Chris described it to me, that I think, really helped is that this is like a Buffalo Springs size road. So if you think about, Buffalo Springs going north to south from 105 to 1097, it's not a major road like Lone Star Parkway, and you don't ever see it, becoming this, huge road. But it's nonetheless, it's an important road kind of through, the mid-eastern side of the city, and this road out on this side would be kind of in that mid-sized road.
So the overpass would be over just the railroad tracks is what
No
they're...
overpass.
Yeah,
No.
overpass.
No overpass,
Yeah,
okay, just a road. Okay, all right, okay.
Right, just avoiding the railroad because the overpass in the middle of the residential
Makes
area
no sense, okay.
doesn't make sense, nor does
Okay.
Dave, what are the road improvements at Buffalo Springs are going to be like as where Home Depot's at? There's,
Correct.
Actually, what the answer to that
It's gonna be exactly the same. So what the proposed section of Buffalo Springs is it's wider at 105 because we have additional turn lanes. But once it gets past the entrance to behind Discount Tire, it's going to a 36-foot wide concrete pavement section.
so is that going to go all the way to Lone Star or just to?
Right now, it stops at the northern boundary of Home Depot. Was part of their funding agreement is their funding up to that point and is on the city's capital plan, as well as trying to get conversations with funding sources between county, state funds, et cetera, because it is such a connection between 1097 and 105,
Yeah.
especially when it's going to be a signalized intersection as well.
Yeah.
So currently, the proposed plan will stop at the northern end of Home Depot. And I would say that's kind of the biggest, obviously, water and sewer capacity is always an issue. As a city growing like Montgomery is, plans and the wheels are in place in that. But I think the biggest thing with this property, and probably the next feasibility study as well that we'll talk about, is that thoroughfare.
Yeah.
The next feasibility study is on that same route.
With this and then the next one coming up, is there any traffic studies on what these are going to do to 105?
They would be required to do that. So any type of, that's a TxDOT governed road, so any type of improvements or changes or additional connections of traffic, they would have to study it and either put in turn lanes or, especially on the next one that would have direct connection to 105 is prepare an analysis and likely install turn lanes to do that. And we would, and it's stated in here, but we would require the same because right now, until that east-west road is extended to 149,
Heavy on that side.
all that traffic is going on to Old Dobbin Plantersville or Old Plantersville Road, which, are not the largest or
Best roads.
shaped roads.
Yeah.
that there are.
That's a lot of traffic,
Yeah.
a lot on that little bitty road.
There's gonna be a lot of traffic.
We're just kind of,
With
back to the
everything being
point.
built out west of us.
What we think is, extremely important is that east-west corridor, especially getting to 149 to Old Plantersville, so that traffic is not coming out right here, but has the outlet to get to either 105 or 149 without hopping on Old Plan.
Okay.
So there's no action on this item, it's more of just an update, answer questions. Like I said, we're still in the early stages with the developer. The next steps is once they come to an agreement and the city comes to an agreement on the roadway, there will be a development agreement. We have to go through annexation, so there's a lot of big creation if they get there. A lot of stuff.
So as this one goes forward, once things are done, we will see a traffic study completed?
Correct.
In advance of that, we'd likely already be looking at the various recommendations and development agreement and that stuff, so the traffic study would come out, as some component of that. In terms of, just not sure if it's the very next thing or if, there's variances or something, but that would be, another good point to tie back to that traffic and just emphasize the importance of it.
Yeah, wow. 105 when it narrows down.
All right. You satisfied on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, next one.
Next one.
All right.
Review and discussion of a feasibility study for proposed 108 acre single-family residential development by Tri Point Homes, Texas, Inc.
All right, so a lot of the water and sewer stuff is the same. I'm going to point out the differences. We talked about the transportation, but again, I'll go through it because it is a different development. So if you look on the cover sheet, page 76 of your packets, you'll see this property extends all the way from Lone Star Parkway to a very small portion at 105, where Westway Drive and Napa is. So as a reminder, you previously looked at a feasibility study at the northern, well, you've actually looked at feasibility studies for both of these properties over the years. Most recently, the northern portion was looked at by the same developer that we just talked about in the last feasibility study. But the southern portion has been looked at 2 or 3 times over the years between different developers, different names. This is kind of the latest iteration that now combines both of those properties. So flipping over to page 78 of your packets, just kind of going through the executive summary. So in this development, they're looking at 90-foot lots, 136 of them across this 108 acres. They likely would not be looking for any type of variance with 90-foot lots. They don't expect any side yard setbacks. Obviously, they got the width and the overall area would be there. Water and sewer, in terms of the plants, are the same that we talked about, continuing to expand those, which you have underway. One big difference is lift station number 5 and how this is actually served, which I'll talk about here in a second. Let me go to the rest of the executive summary. The approximate value of this project, we're looking at about $700,000 per home based on information by the developer, which is approximately $115 million, which would generate $440,000 and ad valorem tax to the city at full build out, assuming current rates they hit that valuation. Again, when you look at just above that, you'll see a breakdown of the infrastructure cost. And the biggest driver in the cost of this project is the lift station number 5. So right now, if you are heading out of town right before you get to Napa, kind of by Montgomery Grove, actually close to Montgomery Grove, there's a lift station down in the creek. And it is old and it's in rough shape, and it does not have capacity to take on this additional development. So what's included in this study is then to relocate that lift station on their site. So, the general concept, if you switch over
To put it on this.
yeah, there's an exhibit.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So if you go to page 85 of your packets. So for this project, and you'll see on page 86 a copy of their land plan. So they would redo Westway Drive and expand it as the north-south through the neighborhood. So Westway Drive would be that connection which is what we talked about previously as that north-south corridor between Lone Star Parkway, 105, and then ultimately down to 149. So if you go back to page 85 of the packets, you'll see that there's a proposed lift station site kind of right in the middle that is off of that new Westway Drive, off to the side of that. It would be made, sized and made deep enough so all of this development will go to it. All the existing flow that's going to lift station number 5 would go to that lift station, as well as we size to handle things around it as they continue to build out for it. So that is a major cost because we're talking a major facility, and they would only, for this development, only use about 35% of that capacity that's needed. So I think it's definitely a case for cost sharing or some type of agreement with them, since it improves and rehabilitates, replaces existing infrastructure for the city, and they're obviously have to add capacity for them, but they're only a portion of the overall capacity of that lift station.
Are they proposing taking up the cost for relocating the lift station?
Mm-hmm.
That is what's what's in this feasibility study, is that they would carry that cost. There is not an agreement in place. I think that is the next steps from them, is it's kind of generally talked about approaching the city for some type of development agreement to share in that cost, or at least give them some credit elsewhere, but none of those details have been ironed out at this time. As far as water goes, our recommendation is they will extend the 12-inch water line along Lone Star Parkway. It currently ends in front of the community center. They would extend it to in front of their property and extend that 12-inch water line through their property, so we would be able to close that loop. Because I know, as we talked about before, that the entire west side of the city is served by a single line. So from right out here all the way down, it all goes down a single 12-inch water line, get to Olive Hills, Town Creek, the stadium, everything else. This would allow a shorter route. It'll loop it to come off the Lone Star Parkway, and then as the city continues to develop, it will continue along Lone Star Parkway to tie into Emma's Way to close one big water line loop to help with pressure redundancy flows out on the west side of town. Drainage is a big consideration. I know I didn't say that on the last item, but with this being on Town Creek, upstream, obviously they'll have to do a drainage impact analysis. There's a lot of floodplain on this property they'll have to contend with, and that is shown in their land plan that they have prepared.
Now, on the following page there, I can't see the number, they're calling this Town Creek Crossing?
That was just, sorry, that was an error on the map.
Okay, because I was going to say, we already have a Town Creek Crossing.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
they started early with Town Creek Crossing and realized that they needed a more unique name. So we already got one of those.
That's where I live.
They backed up on that one. But we talked about the transportation. It's the same thing as we talked about. So extending Westway Drive, that north-south corridor, and then ultimately that would carry on to the south. We can go back into that if you would like to, but it's the same as we have.
The blue line through there, I'm looking on page 86, where they're showing the homes,
Yes.
plots, whatever. There's a lake detention, and then there's like a little blue line. That's not the water line you're talking about. Is that like a little lake?
No, that would be the floodplain.
Okay, all right.
So there is floodplain across the property, so I believe that was their floodplain. I'm
Okay.
right, so,
All right.
but I believe that was.
I just want to make sure, because, yeah,
Oh, that is showing the extent of the creek. So there's an
Yeah.
existing creek
yes.
that runs through, that ultimately goes behind, between the stadium and those front commercial reserves
Yes.
and out to the storage facility. So it's that continuation of that
Okay.
piece of town.
Not a lot of green area proposed.
I think the road just kind of showing that.
Yeah, I know, I'm just- Yeah,
There isn't, but there's also with there not being below the 75-foot lots,
yeah,
there's not a compensating green space requirement because they're going to have.
yeah, they're going to have nice lots.
90 by
Yeah,
90 by 175 foot deep lots where your minimum is 75 by 120.
One iteration we saw was a gated community. That would not be possible if we were to consider Westway as our thoroughfare, correct?
That's correct. And that's part of kind of the developer's ongoing kind of look to see how they want to address that. Obviously, there's concern about having a thoroughfare through a development. Understandably so, I think by taking it from that full thoroughfare down to a smaller street helps. That's part of what they're looking at as well. Because there's definitely a need, in our opinion, for that north-south corridor.
Indicated was that was the last bulk tour, posted, I think, like 1 acre lots.
You're right.
Yeah.
That going to.
And then, would this require annexation as well?
There's a small sliver that does, so behind if you look on page
I think 85 shows it.
98,
98.
there's a copy of the zoning map, so you'll see their areas hatched in the blue. So there's a small section between essentially the school property behind Mid-South that would require annexation. And it's the same scenario as the Dobbin plan result. That was part of that 2011 agreement that got kind of inside the loop taken out of their system.
Any other thoughts or questions on that?
I think we need to change the name of it to No Variance Neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we're ready for.
Is that it? Everybody good? Okay. On to item 6, consideration and possible action on calling a public hearing to be held on June 4th, 2024 regarding a proposed amendment to Chapter 98 of the City Code of Ordinances.
All right, commissioners, while Gary's going to speak a little more, to this one here, I'll give, again, just kind of the backstory of, how and why we're here is, you guys will recall there was an application at the last meeting for a special use permit for an outdoor event being used. The council did not want to stall that public hearing, so the application effectively died. But at the same time, council's indication was they felt like that type of use, maybe should be considered to be allowed by right, or in other words, not a, not a
Special event.
special use. So Gary and I took a look at, what it would take to craft a definition and what sections of the code that we would need to amend, and that information is in your packet, and with that, I'll turn it over to you guys for any thoughts or questions you have. I'll turn it over to Gary if he has anything more than I do to add on that.
So,
I'll answer questions, but I don't have anything that really covers it.
so why wasn't our considerations taken again? I mean, is it, so they feel that they did not need a special use permit for an event center there, is that correct?
I think the thought was, I'll answer, Dave, I don't want to speak for the council, but I
Right.
think in the conversation that I was part of and heard, they thought it should be permitted anyway. Because this use would be fitting in the commercial district. I think that the council members that commented that spoke about it didn't understand why this was coming to them.
Right,
That's what I got.
okay.
So they're saying it should be permitted.
I got the sense that they felt that it should just be permitted, yes. But our ordinance doesn't allow it. So that's why we're bringing this forward tonight.
So what we're trying to do is narrow that special use down for an
Well, I
event
guess
center?
We're trying to put some guardrails on what a small event venue would be.
Okay, so
And
this-
for us, a couple of things that seemed important was it needs to be a secondary use or an accessory use to something that's already going on the property. In other words, you couldn't have a 5-acre field and turn it into a small event.
Right, right.
Venue.
So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to come up with an ordinance that states event center.
We would add a definition,
Of an
basically,
event
that,
center,
what that
okay.
ordinance would do, you're exactly right. What that ordinance would do would be to amend, two sections of the code. So we would add a definition, so we would make clear what this, what the use is. And then we would amend the table of uses to put that, under B, commercial.
And then we would come up with the I don't know,
Parameters,
guidelines
yeah.
of what that needed to have.
In terms of operating parameters, I don't know that we would get into operating parameters.
No, all you're doing is adding a use to a district, really, is what you're doing. The use
Okay.
that's not currently allowed, that, in my opinion, should be allowed in there, and I think we all, I don't want to speak for you, but I think this activity should be allowed in the commercial district. I guess the question is, do you want this activity in, first of all, the commercial district? Well, really, you can check that, because we're working on that ordinance. Do you want to allow this activity in the commercial district? Really, that's the question. And I feel it should be permitted as a principal use.
A principal use.
Yeah, principal.
Not a
permitted
side,
use.
not a
By
side.
right, yes.
Right, not a sideline.
But that's
No,
not
no
how it was
special
brought
use
to
allowed.
us. I mean, they have changed their definition of what they've wanted to do in that spot since day one. And it evolved and changed every single time they came before us. And I will
You
bring
can
up,
take that out of it. I'm
Yeah.
just saying in general, philosophically, do you want to allow a special event venue, a small event venue in your commercial district? Really, that's the question.
I will bring up that, the new, place that has jazzy blue color on it, that used to be Pecan Hill, they do have a patio that was built out, and they have had functions out there that has music. I'm just bringing this to y'all's attention, that there's lights on that, I would say.
But she's
deck. Is
putting
it-
that on. It's not an outside,
Oh, okay,
it's not an outside organization having a wedding or whatnot there. She is putting those art exhibits and stuff on. We're talking about outside
Right.
parties, yeah.
Right.
Like
And again,
wedding
not the
reception.
owners, it's
Right.
just somebody who's
Yeah.
renting the space.
Correct.
Right, and the street action tonight, again, is not to narrow it down or pin down an exact definition, really just to call that public hearing, so, and then after that, you guys are gonna form a report. So
Okay,
So
I got
between
you.
this meeting is an introduction, next meeting is where we're gonna come out of that with the recommendation to council on, that includes, again, the staff recommendation is to add a definition and to amend the table of uses, those two things, and so.
Now, what would the wording be
Here, it's-
to announce? I see what you got here.
Oh, okay.
To announce to the public to what they want to discuss. Just,
What's the, kind of the announcement to the public
No, it's
or what the notification process?
yeah,
What that, looks like, so state of Texas, is gonna require us to publish legal notice and, for it. Honestly, there's not, I don't know how many people are reading the newspaper these days
Yeah.
for legal notices on public hearings, but that's what the state law requires. We don't, have to mail out a letter. It would be difficult to, in terms of a staff standpoint or from a resource standpoint, to try to mail, a letter to every residential owner whose property was near enough to commercial to be affected, but not affected. And so we would notify, the public notice and then just the agenda publishing, but I wasn't intending on any kind of, special notification process for it.
because I think the consensus of the commission here, when we discussed this, was parking. That was the big issue. The big problem was parking, and we continue to not address parking in the historic district. It's just a nightmare.
Yeah, they would still have to meet all the other standards, all the other regulations.
Right.
So, I mean, really, again, I know it's hard to separate the actual project from the rezoning, but or the text amendment that's before you, kind of back to the rezoning you had earlier tonight, you gotta remove that and think about this purely from a zoning standpoint and from a text amendment standpoint, not from a
504
Grace
Caroline.
Point property standpoint, yes.
We're not talking about specifically just 504 Caroline, we're talking about all the commercial.
Yeah, anywhere in the
properties.
commercial district.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure this is the most prudent time to do it, but as the Montgomery is growing, should we consider a large event venue description at some point?
I think we can kind of dovetail that into this whole recodification project we have going on. So that'd be the right time to put that in there.
Yeah, I think
And
that's,
if we get somebody that comes in and petitions for that, then we can,
Exactly.
we can address it, but I think it's not really a priority.
I don't think it's a priority at this moment, it's just something that better have it done before it gets requests.
So what we're here to do is to recommend
Just to call public hearing.
call for a public hearing on the,
Yeah.
June 4th.
Hearing for your next P and Z meeting.
okay.
Well, I'll make a motion that we call for a public hearing to be held on June 4th, 2024 regarding a proposed amendment to Chapter 98 of the City Code Ordinance here at City Hall.
where would that meeting be held? Right here?
Here, yes, sir.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. For the calling of a public hearing, June 4th, 2024, for the amendment to the ordinance section 98-88.
No, we're gonna try and be prepared at that open meeting to respond to somebody asking, what is a large event?
Well, this specifies 10 to 100 attendees.
I know, but that's a small event.
So I mean, over that, I don't know.
We're not going to do large, we're just doing small.
Right, yeah, only doing, only looking at small, or small event venues at the moment. So, there may be folks here for the public hearing, but typically with planning and zoning public hearings, man, I might count on one hand how many times I see a lot of folks show up. Now, this will be the one that proves me wrong, the one before.
All 200 that we invite,
Yeah.
that have never showed up, maybe 3.
So we got all that taken care of, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there any commission inquiry?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
we've addressed and talked several times about the current location of the trash dumpsters that are in downtown, and nothing has ever been addressed or fixed about it. We still have trash big bins right out on the main throughway when you drive down 149 in front of all those shops. And I was just wondering, because I know the steakhouse was supposed to move their big trash bin, but didn't. They came and they asked about a boundary. Cozy Great is still got theirs out front. And I believe there's another trash can out front on 149. I was just wondering.
I think that we should require that they be fenced.
So we still do not have a regulation that I can find in print that says that we can compel someone to screen it. Some of the folks who were here, even before me, said that they were sure that they saw it. I'm sure I did too at some point. I don't know where, I don't know when, but I cannot find anything that says that we, have to compel them to. I'm sure there's steps that we, can take. I just don't know what they are.
Can we look into that and maybe address that when we don't have
I
a
can bring
visit?
some information back to you
Thank you.
guys. I don't want to,
Yes.
commit to, solving the problem. What I
Yeah,
can
okay.
commit to is bringing back information that,
Okay.
tell us more about it.
All right.
Every time it's been brought up, we lack an ordinance has been the issue. We don't have an ordinance in place to cover it.
If we adopt an ordinance, to be clear, it's, so my general understanding is those then become a non-conforming use. So they change when the site changes or when the owner changes or something like that. So even an ordinance doesn't solve, the stuff that we're looking at now.
But it could change if the owner changes, sell a property.
I don't want to say that I know for sure on that. I don't know. Whether, the change in ownership, continues a non-conforming use. But again, that's kind of a hypothetical or just kind of a question. So I'm not sure. But
All right, well, we'll just look for the information you have for us and we'll move from there.
So we'll see what we can do, but, you know, I don't know that we have, you know, necessarily a stick, component to compel that, but, you know, hopefully with the downtown, design work that's going on, we can, you know, show some carrot options that, you know, compel people to make them look a little better.
Okay, good.
We do have the paved samples that we've kind of gone through. This has been 6 months
Yes.
in the conversations. I'm not sure what the necessary process would be to get this out as a recommended source of proposed colors. I don't know if we need to, I know at this point, we can only propose items for the next agenda, but I'm not sure if this is, does it need to go on an agenda, or is this something we can put out?
If you want to send it over to me, let me and Gary,
That's right.
you know, look at that.
Can I hand this to you?
I'll take it, and then,
Okay.
you know,
That's
we'll
what
kind
you
of
gave
look
me,
at it and see, you know, kind of the best way to move it forward, but,
I sent you the one on lighting also.
yes, I
Yeah.
do have an email from you on that as well.
And one more thing, the signs in downtown,
Yes, ma'am.
there's some that have been, well, there's been one about, is it a gated mobile home place? And then how soon after the elections do the signs come down? And even though I love the barbecue place, I love them, they're the best, whatever, that sign that's out in front of them, that has the possibility of being lit up, but I don't think they light it up, it's kind of plastic on legs with a red arrow. Is that an approved sign to be sitting out front of that establishment for this length of period of time?
I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, but I'll be glad to follow up.
I'm just wondering, because the signs are there. And I love them, and, you know, I want to advertise what I want to advertise, but I just
Now,
want
the
to.
sheriff goes through the 28th.
And what about, is it
rest of-
school council?
That's
School
all,
council?
that's all taken, that's all
Yeah.
done, yeah.
I'm just wondering, does our ordinance person go and say, hey, it's time?
Usually the city picks them up, don't they?
Right, if they're in the right of way, if they're on private property, we, you know, don't touch them.
Yeah.
Election signs are kind of a third rail because you're getting into
Right.
streets.
It is private property, I mean, it's past the sidewalk.
So, yeah, once it, you know, but I will look into that, you know, let us follow up.
I mean, I'm all for advertisement, but it doesn't fall in line with everything else we've been so strict about, you know, all the other signs that we said something about.
Yes, ma'am.
Who's that, Barbie Cook?
Yeah,
They-
RAQ.
Did they not apply for a sign?
I haven't seen one yet. You know which one it is, right?
They're not in the historic district, so they wouldn't.
Oh, so that wasn't, okay.
Yeah, they-
But it is within the city limits, which is city limits ordinances on the signs.
Right.
Yeah. I know them personally. They're like, what are you doing, taking down our advertisement? No, I was just asking.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
A second.
Now, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the, what's the day, May 5th?
May 7th.
May 7th, city, my goodness. Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Woo.